Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video we will be talking about the file handling concepts in Java. So in order to do file handling in Java, we have to understand several concepts which are related to it, like what are streams and what are the different packages that we have to import while working with different operations in Java. So all of it we will be discussing in this video. So in today's video we will be covering what is file handling in Java and what is stream, the different methods which are used in file operations using Java, and also we will see a few programs related to how we can do those operations. Okay, so let us begin. So talking about file handling, it is one of the specialized functionalities which is provided by Java, and it is used to perform various operations on a file such as read or write, etc. Now reading from a file or writing data into a file, that is facilitated using the java.io package, and we can use the specific package while we are developing or while we are working with any operations. So we will see them when we do a program related to this. So an object of the file class is needed to be created, or we have to create that object in order to work with different operations. So these are the two primary things that we have to keep in mind. First, we have to import this package, which is java.io.file. So this is in order to enable file class to be integrated into the program, and then we have to create an object of the file class so that we can work with the different file operations. Now talking about this object, when we are creating this object, essentially we also have to mention the name of the file along with the extension when we are working with it. So IO operations, basically on a file, it uses the stream concept. When we are talking about the stream concept, we have to understand that stream basically is a sequence of data which can be read from a file or which can be written into a file, and this stream of data or this sequence of data can be of two different types. First one is the byte stream and the second one is the character stream. So when we are talking about byte stream, it mainly incorporates the byte data. So whenever we were working with the byte data, essentially we have to understand that we have to make use of the byte stream, and when an input is provided and executed with a byte data, we call the file handling process to be working with a byte stream. Okay, and the character stream is basically that operation which is incorporates various characters. Okay, or when we are dealing with data which are basically characters, and processing of input data with character is known as the operation, or is known as the file handling process with a character stream. So these are some of the preliminary concepts which are related to working with files. That means we have to import the package, these two are very important, and we have to create an object, and we also have to identify the process which we need to work with. That means whether we would like to work with a byte stream or a character stream. Now talking about the different file methods. So if we are considering different Java file methods, so these are already predefined methods in Java which are used to work with various operations. So these predefined methods will help us to work with any operation in file, and would also help us to identify what type of return type we are getting after that operation is successful or if it is not. So the first one is a can read. This one would be, yes, so it is a can read method. So the return type here it is associated is a boolean, and it will test whether that file is readable or not. So the readability of a file can be identified using the can read method. So whether this is readable or not readable, we would be able to understand if we use this particular method. And of course this has a boolean type of return type. Okay, the next we have is can write, sorry, we will write this again. Okay, can write, so this is also type, it also has a boolean type, and here it is used to identify whether a particular file is writable or not writable. So many of the files we do not have permissions to append or to write anything into it, so under that scenario we can actually make out whether we can write into that file or not. The third method is very important, which is used to create a new file, and the method is create new file, and this also has a boolean return type, and it will create an empty file. So whenever we are creating, we are using this particular method, we would be able to create a file without anything which is written into it. Another important method which is there is delete, and this method would simply be deleting a file, delete a file, and we have a boolean return type, that means whether our file has been deleted or not. Okay, and the fifth important method which is there is exists. So this method, this tests whether a file exists. So file existence is determined here using this method, and it also has a boolean return type. And the sixth method that we will discuss is get name. So this particular method, it has a string as a return type, and it is responsible for returning the name of the file. Returning the name of the file. Yes, and the next one we have is get absolute path. So get absolute path is basically a method which would help us to return the absolute path name, that means where that particular file is located. So absolute path name of the file would be given in this particular method, through this particular method, and this will essentially have a string as a return type. Okay, then again in point number 8 we can discuss the length. So these are some of the very commonly used methods, and the return type here is long, and it will return the size of the file in bytes, size of the file in bytes. Okay, and the next important method is list, and this has an array type, string array as a return type, and this will be primarily responsible for returning the array of files. So it will return the array of files in the directory, in whichever directory we are considering. So the next one is mkdir. So this is also one of the very commonly used methods. So mkdir is basically we will be able to create a directory. So these few methods are very commonly and essential methods which are used in file operations. However, there are further more operations which are associated with file IO, that means file input output, and we have different methods which we can use, of course, at different points of time. So we will also discuss this in our subsequent videos, but today we will be just looking at a few of the operations few of these methods which we have already discussed, like can, write, or create new file, delete, okay, get name, get absolute path. So these kind of information related methods we will be discussing this in this video. Okay, so now when we are talking about file operations, so today we will be discussing a few operations. First one is to create a file, okay. The second one would be to get file information. The third one would be to write into a file, and the fourth one would be to read from a file, and the fifth operation would be deleting a file. Okay, so these 5 operations today we will be discussing in this video. So first let us begin with the first operation, which is the creating a file. So when we are talking about creating a file, we have to make use of the method create new file. Okay, so this method would be used, and since it has a boolean return type, it will be returning true if the file is successfully created, or false if it is not created. Okay, so now let us see how it looks like. As already mentioned, we have to import the package, which is java.io.file. We can also use java.io.star, but for specificity we can it is recommended that we use the file class, okay, in order to import the file class. And then in order to handle the input output exception, so we already talked about IO exception, which is one of the checked exceptions in Java. So we also have to import the exception class, which is java.io.io exception, and these two are essential when we are working with this type of code. So now what I'll do is I'll just create a class, let's say file create, and then within this let me just write down the main method, which is public static void main string arguments, and within this main method, now what I have to do, I have to simply use the try catch block, because since this particular program has a scope of throwing an IO exception, input output exception, so we have to handle those kind of exception. So the next step would be, so first important step was to import that particular class, and second important point that we already discussed is to create an object. So I'll create an object of file, which is f is equal to new file, and here I have to mention the name of the file which we want to create. So let us say that I want to create in C drive, let's say E drive or D drive, so D test.txt. okay, so this is where what the file name should be like, or if we want to change the location, then also we can do it. It is up to us, but if we want to do it in the same directory, then we can use this particular statement, not an issue. But if you want to change it, you have to mention the full location where we want to create that particular file. Okay, now we have to associate one condition where it will be specifying that whether my file is created or not. So we will use that object f dot create new file, and here what I'll try to do is I will try to print out that system.out.println if the file is created, then I will simply use f dot get name. So we are using another method here where I am trying to get the name of the file which has just been created. So file created is this, okay, f dot get through f dot get name. Otherwise what we can do is, I'll continue in the next slide. So else what we can do is we can simply print system.out.println, and if the file already exists, okay, so file already exists, because the file in this particular drive might exist or not. Only if it does not exist, then it is able to create, right? So if there is no existence, it will check for that particular situation and it will create a new file using the create new file, okay. And if create new file is successful, that means if we get a true out of this particular condition, then we will simply print the name of the file, okay. Now if the file already exists, then we have to print it, or we can simply display it, right? And after this, since we have used try, we also have to use the exception handling code, which is the name of the class, which is IO exception followed by the reference variable, and I can simply use to print the exception if it occurs any, and I'll simply print the exception object here, okay. So this is basically the program which will be enabling us to create a file. The two important factors we have to remember is we have to import the file class, and we have to create an object and use that object along with the method in order to create the new file. If the create new file method is successful, we will simply print that file is created, and we will get the name of the file which has been created here in this particular statement, and then otherwise we will give a display statement saying that the file already exists. And if any such situation occurs, we have to also mention that there is an exception, and if there is an exception, we have to give the exception handling, or we have to handle that exception using the try catch block. Here we have simply printed the exception object, okay. The next and what happens here is, here basically, since we have already created this we have created this test.txt, what should be the output? The output here would be, we will get something like this: file created, and it is basically test.txt, okay. So this is the output which we will be getting, and under the D drive we will actually find this test.txt file being created, okay. So the next important program which we will be discussing is getting the information. So this one is getting file information. So file information, as in we will be talking about different types of information like file name, okay. We will be getting to know about the file name, then what is the absolute path. So all this has already inbuilt methods, okay, or predefined methods in Java to get all this information. Then whether it is writable, or what is the readability factor, that means whether it is readable, or what is the file size, okay, file size in bytes. So all these factors we will be looking at through a program, or how to get all this kind of information, okay. So let us look into it. How does the program look like? So as already mentioned, we have to import the java.io.file. Secondly, we also have to import the exception class java.io.exception. The exception would be, again, we can use io exception. So these two lines would be common for both the programs. Okay, and now what we have to do, we have to create a class which is, let's say, file info. Okay, and within this, let me write down the main method, public static void main, then string arguments. Okay, so within this main method, now what we have to do, we have to first create the file object. So let's say file f is equal to new file, and here what do we have to write? We have to mention the name of the file from which we want to get the information. Okay, suppose the name of the file is test.txt. so this is the file basically from where we want to get the information. Okay, file which would be used for information. So this is the name of the file. This is not the file which needs to be created, but it is the name of the file from which we need to get the information that we have already discussed. Okay, so now the condition is if f dot exists. So first of all, we have to check, right, whether the file exists or not. Okay, and if this particular condition returns me a true value, then what do we have to do? We have to use different predefined methods again in order to derive the various information related to the file. So what I'll do is system.out.println. so here let's say the file name we want to print. Okay, so f dot get name. So this we have already discussed in my previous program. Okay, we will get the name of the file. Then suppose we need the absolute path, we will again use one of the predefined methods, which is, let's say, absolute path. So here what do we use? We will be using f dot get absolute path. Okay, so these two are continued. We do not have space here, so it is written on the next line. Okay, and the next information which we will be getting is whether the file is writable or not. Okay, so here also we will be using a predefined method, which is f dot can write. Okay, so this will again execute, and it will find out whether I'm getting a true or a false as an answer. Okay, then we have to write system.out.println, and here we will be checking if it is readable or not. So f dot can read, right? So f dot can read, and then we will find out whether what is the size of the file. So size, basically we will be we can use another method which we have already listed, which is length. Okay, so all these predefined methods will help us in order to get the different information like the name, absolute path, writability and readability, as well as the size of the file. Now what if we do not get a true as the first condition? So under that situation, what we will do, we will simply write system.out.println the file does not exist, because all of these values will determine will be printed only if the file exists. If it does not exist, then we have to use this condition. Now here we have not written the try catch block. However, please remember that you have to incorporate the try as well as catch block in order to handle the um, in order to handle your exceptions, okay, if there are any. So that this one I will not be writing here. This is up to you to practice, okay. So the next before that we have to mention the output. So when we are writing the output, so when we are executing this program, we will get the file name as test.txt, and then we will get the absolute path. So absolute path will be whatever path is there, okay. Let's say it is in E drive, so E test.txt, and then what we decided on to find out the writability. So writable or not, we'll get either a true or a false. Then readability, so whether it is a readable file or not, so it will give us a true or false as an answer. And then we will also have file size. So file size again, sorry, we will just get the file here, size here, because the printf statement is designed in this. So size we will get as, let's say, 10 or 15 or 20 or 100, whatever file size is there, okay. So this is the program through which we can write some specific information to a specific file. Now the next important program that we will be discussing is if we want to write into a file, okay. So writing into a file, when we are writing into a file, we have to remember one important factor here, that we have to use file writer class. For this we have to import this file writer class along with the write method. So these two methods, this method and the file writer class will have to be working together, will have to work together in order to write some text into a file. So if we are considering a code here, we have to import java.io dot, instead of file we will now import the file writer class, and then we also have to import java.io dot io exception. And now let us write down the program. So let's consider file write as the class name, and then we have public static void main string arguments, and after that we have to do is let's associate try here, okay. And then we will be now creating an object of the file writer class. Since we will make use of the file writer class, so we will also have to create an object of the same class. So new file writer followed by the name of the file in which we want to write something. So let us write test.txt. So this is the file where we want to write some text into that into the file. So now along with this particular object, this we will be using the method which we have already mentioned, the write method, and within this write method now I'll pass on the parameter as a string which needs to be written into the file. So let's say hello world. Okay, so this is the string which needs to be passed, and what we will do is we will simply close the file. Okay, so f dot close, and once we do this, the file writer the object of the file writer will close the file, and we can give a simple statement as system.out.println successfully written into the file. So, and after this, what we can do is we will simply catch, if there is, we will use the catch block in order to handle the exception. Okay, so IO exception E, and here we can use to we can simply print whatever the exception object is. So this is how we can write a text into a specified file. Okay, this write method is one of the very important methods which is very helpful while we are trying to incorporate any type of text in my program. Okay, so when we run the file, we will get an output here as hello world, and then not hello world will be mentioned in my test.txt. okay, so this is what would be written in my test.txt, and what would be there which would be there in my terminal, it would be written as successfully written into the file. So this would basically be displayed in the terminal, successfully written into the file. This particular string, it would be written inside the test.txt file. So you can also cross verify by clicking onto the file which is there in the folder, or which is there in the directory, which is test.txt, and you will find that this string is written into the specified file. The next important program that we will be discussing is reading from a file. Okay, that means reading a file, whatever text is written there, if we want to read it. So how can we do that? So here we have to import the file class again, java.io.file, and we also have to import another exception class here, java.io.filenotfound because this kind of program is might have a possibility of throwing this kind of exception, where if the file is not present, we will not be able to read from that file. So we have to incorporate that exception and exception handling code inside this particular program. Also, we have to import the scanner class. Okay, so import java.util.scanner. Now this scanner class would be used, yes, so java.util.scanner. So this scanner class would be used to read the text files. Now let us go to the main code. So if we have a class, let's say read file, and within this I have the main method, void main string arguments, and here what I'll try to do is first let us create this try, and let's say yes, we have to create an object, file f is equal to new file, and within this we have to create the object of the file for reading the data. That means we have to mention the file, let's say test.txt. okay, so next what we have to do, we also have to use the scanner object. Let's say scanner s is equal to new scanner f. So this will be using the scanner class in order to read from the file. Now we will use a while f has next line. Okay, and then what we will do, let us consider string a is equal to f dot next line. So this will basically read the next line which is there, read the different text which is there inside that particular file, and we will simply print the value whatever is written in that particular file. Okay, and then we have to close the file which we have opened for reading, and we will catch the file not found exception. So if the file is not there, it will throw us a file not found exception, and we have to handle it. And let's say here we will simply write down error. Okay, so this is how this particular reading of a file takes place. So here we have to understand that we need three different classes to be imported: file to create the file object, file not found except this is file not found exception. Okay, file not found exception, and then we have util.scanner. So the scanner is basically used to read from that file. So we will create an object, and then we will also create a scanner object in which we will be passing the value of the the already created file object. Sorry, this needs to be changed. Okay, so this will be basically now s. So s and s here. So while s dot has next line, that means if it has data, then what it will do, it will that data would be read and stored in a, which is a string, and we will be printing the value of the string. Okay, whichever is there. Suppose test.txt that we are considering here. Okay, it has what it have? It has the text, or it has the yes, it has the text as hello world. So this would be printed in my terminal. Okay, so this is the output that we will be getting. So this is how basically this is all of these works together. Now talking about the last one, which is deleting a file. So the fifth one is deleting a file. Now if we want to delete a file using Java, what do we have to do? So first we have to import the file class java.io.file, and then let's say, and we can also import the IO exception. Okay, so now what we can do is class file delete, and then let's say public static void main string arguments, string arguments. And here what I'll try to do is I'll create an object of file, then new file, and now I would like to delete the test.txt from my directory or from my folder. So now if f dot delete is successful, so if this particular operation is successful, then what I'll do is I'll just print out that deleted file. And what file is deleted, that I can simply use the get name method in order to get the name of the file which has been deleted. Else what I can do is else system.out.println failed to delete. Okay, so this is basically how we can delete a file using the predefined method which is already there, that means deleting a file. Okay, so these are some of the few methods which we have discussed. Here the output would be deleted file followed by the file name which is test.txt. So these are some of the methods. We checked how we can create a method, get file information, then we also checked about how we can delete a file, as well as how we can write into a file, as well as how we can read from a file. So all these things we have already discussed, and we will be discussing a few more operations which are related to file in my next video. Thank you.